Brian Thomas Jr. is the better first-round draft pick than Malik Nabers. It's time to debate tough wide receiver draft decisions on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today, we are going to go through some tough wide receiver draft decisions that you may have to make when you're sitting there in certain rounds throughout your draft. So these are all guys going very close to each other, and we're going to decide who we would personally rather take if we had to make these decisions. So let's start with two guys that are going, maybe in that first round turn, late in the first round or early second round. And it's two guys entering their second season in the NFL. Malik Nabers versus Brian Thomas Jr. So Brian Thomas finished ahead of Nabers in overall scoring last year. Thomas was the wide receiver 4, and Nabers was the wide receiver 7 overall. However, Nabers averaged more points per game than Brian Thomas. He was the wide receiver 8 on average, while Thomas was the wide receiver 12. If you are deciding, Vinny, while you're in your draft, which guy to go with, who are you taking?
Yeah, first I'll say I love these guys. I mean, crazy. I mean, near the top you have Jamar Chase versus Justin Jefferson teammates at LSU. Then you come down again, and you have teammates at LSU that you need to consider not far down from those guys. So just a crazy embarrassment of riches from one school. Now, Malik Nabers, look, I want to like Malik Nabers more, but there's some circumstances that are not in his control. The quarterback mess, I'm a little concerned just about all the quarterbacks. Look, with what we saw at some points, that we saw him become the go-to guy for every quarterback. But I think you might get a little picky if it's Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston. They might be a little bit more conservative. This team could run the ball a little bit more. If you have Jackson Dart, you have no idea what to expect. He's got a big arm, but what's going to happen here? Is it going to be accurate to get to Nabers? So really, I'm going with the momentum of the offensive offseason, really, and going to Brian Thomas Jr. I mean, a lot of things have lined up beautifully for him. Liam Cohen has taken over as the offensive coordinator. He produced last year. Don't forget this. He produced well with Mac Jones last year. And Trevor Lawrence had an off year. I think he kind of rebounds this year in this offense. So you look at Travis Hunter. People are going to have to account for Travis Hunter when he's on the field, and the coverage is going to become easier for him to navigate. And things just lined up, right? We didn't expect him to explode so much as a first-round pick, but Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram went by the wayside. You didn't have Gabe Davis at all become a factor on this team. So it was super easy for Brian Thomas Jr. to accelerate into a top role. Now, I don't see that diminishing at all for a guy, Liam Cohen, that got a ton of receivers, not just Mike Evans, but Chris Godwin. So he's going to make him a centerpiece of this offense. And again, we might see Nabers. Maybe we're kind of fooling ourselves. The Giants, the bigger name market, the bigger market overall. Odell Beckham Jr. might be dreaming of another LSU guy there. But in terms of straight up production, I think Thomas is in a better position to produce all around. Again, he has a better quarterback that's going to be rather consistent than that trio that we have in New York. We could have all three guys starting once again. I mean, it seems like they always have three guys starting for the Giants in any season, where there's going to be a little bit more consistency here. The Jaguars should score a little bit more, so Thomas should have more chances for touchdowns. It was very close last year, as Michelle pointed out. I mean, Thomas was a little bit more efficient overall in playing all the games, but it was not very different, right? 8 versus 12 in scoring. So Thomas was right there. Just a few things in his favor. We're going to put him over the top. Michelle, I think he got that with the offense and his role here for Liam Cohen.
Yeah, I know that those are the things that are leaning towards Brian Thomas Jr. It's that he has a better quarterback than Nabers. Even though Trevor Lawrence has had his struggles, I'd still much rather depend on him than an old Russell Wilson right now. And he has the better play caller in Liam Cohen. At least we think so. And he might, people might be a little bit scared that Travis Hunter could steal away some of Brian Thomas Jr.'s targets. I just really don't think that will be the case because there's so many vacated targets with the Jaguars that there's a plenty to give Hunter without it taking away from Thomas. And it's not like Thomas saw 133 targets last year, and maybe those come down a little bit because so much of those came from weeks 13 through 18, where he was seeing double-digit targets every single week because he was a necessity. But he's still that big play guy. I still think he's going to be the go-to guy in the red zone, and he's going to catch a lot of those touchdowns. So I'm leaning Brian Thomas Jr. as well. I think my biggest worry with Nabers, I'm fine with where he's going, and if Thomas was gone, I would consider Nabers. It's not like I'm off of him. I think an excellent talent. I think he's going to kill it in volume, right? He's going to get a ton of targets. He got 170 last year. He caught 7 of the Giants' 15 passing touchdowns. It's just with Russell Wilson, he really needs to throw it over the middle. He despises to throw it over the middle. So if you're limiting Nabers to just having to make those outside catches and near the sidelines and not giving him space to work after the catch, those are going to limit him a bit. And how long will Russell Wilson last? The Giants' schedule to start the year is really, 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 really brutal, which means they'll probably have to throw a lot. So that's not the worst for Nabers, but it also could mean Russell Wilson could get benched. And then you're going on to either Jameis Winston, which we wouldn't hate for Nabers at all, or they just say, let's see what we can get from Jackson Dart. So then he's playing with a rookie. There's just a lot of question marks around Nabers' situation, and you don't have that as much around Brian Thomas Jr. So I'm going to go. I just think Brian Thomas is safer. They both have super high ceilings. So in that case, that's why I would lean that way. We have 4 more debates to go through at the wide receiver position, and we will do that after we hear from one of our sponsors.
All right, this episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. It's time to fuel up and turn it up with 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, this is the hole-in-one for your energy game. Let's be honest, some days on the course or off it, you just need that extra boost to stay sharp and energized. It could be huge on the back nine when you're looking to push through and you've got a battle with your friend or a bet going. You might just need to have a little extra on your side to push through, and you could make a lot of shots that we haven't seen before, and you might still need a little bit something left in your golf bag, and 5 Hour Energy is going to provide that to you. Golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors, of course. The grape ginger lime flavor gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without chasing down the bev cart. Just go to 5hourenergy.com today. That is the number 5, 5hourenergy.com. If you go there, you can use the promo code LOCKEDONGolf to receive 20% off your first order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. This code is not good on subscription orders. Whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion-flavored 5 Hour Energy shots today. All right, Michelle. So we are 1 for 1. If you're keeping score at home on our debates here, we're siding with Brian Thomas Jr. If we were faced with that decision, we would take him over Malik Nabers. Now, when we're on the clock with this one, this is a little bit tougher. We have the wide receiver 9 on the board versus around the wide receiver 10 where you're looking at with A.J. Brown. So it's Drake London versus A.J. Brown. Where are you siding with this one, Michelle? Because, again, it's pretty close and one decision that I think a lot of drafters will have to make.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards A.J. Brown. So London last year was the wide receiver 5 in total points, but they finished back-to-back in average scoring. Drake London was the wide receiver 14 on average, while A.J. Brown was the wide receiver 13. London's season was exciting for him. That was his breakout year, while A.J. Brown's season felt very disappointing because we've seen bigger seasons from him, right? But Brown went through some injury issues in the, pretty early on. I mean, he got hurt in week 1 and missed weeks 2 through 5. But and the team just leaned on the run so much, and they could lean on the run and continue to do that. But I just think AJ Brown and Drake London are going to have issues with target consistency. But I trust AJ Brown in that Eagles offense more when he gets the targets. So, I mean, there's only 6 games last year where AJ Brown got 8+ targets. And in those games, he absolutely dominated, averaged 18.2 points per game. And we saw his 2023 season and, have a great season there as well. He actually averaged more points per game in 2024 than in 2023 when AJ Brown was the wide receiver 7. So I just think that we have more consistency with AJ Brown. With Drake London, you have a new quarterback in Michael Penix Jr. And I know he had that massive game with Penix in week 18, but that also skewed his end of the year results. Without that game, I mean, his numbers go down pretty drastically. And he only really had 2 big games all year long, with one of them coming in week 18 without Darnell Mooney there and getting 18 targets in that game. There's just so many weeks where he really disappointed you. And so did AJ Brown. But like I said, I just trust AJ Brown to bounce back more than I trust London to get an absurd amount of targets next year.
Yeah, Drake London, again, that average thing is you really have to look at, because this is a big disparity, right? Where he finished overall, he finished at his jersey number at wide receiver 5 in total scoring, but looking at it again, wide receiver 14 in average scoring, that's a big disparity that you don't always consider. And then if you look at it that way, AJ Brown was the better receiver because he was the wide receiver 13 on average and wide receiver 18 in total scoring. So if you're looking week to week, AJ Brown was the better receiver than Drake London. Of course, the availability and the kind of breakout year of London was there. I mean, he's no slouch. He was very good, and he's the number 1 here for the Falcons, and that will remain the case for Michael Penix Jr. in this offense. But the one amazing stat to me is when Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, Saquon Barkley, and Devonta Smith were all on the field, the Eagles didn't lose a game last year. I mean, when they get this engine going with everyone available, it's a very hard offense and team to stop scoring-wise. And I think AJ Brown, look, he had his little pouty session, right? Not getting the ball. What was his relationship with Jalen Hurts? Then he started reading from his book. And then all of a sudden, okay, we're going to grease the squeaky wheel. And that just needs to happen a few times with AJ Brown. Once you get him more engaged, you have to get this guy engaged. And the biggest thing is, like, teams always try to double team him and take him out. I think what happened is Jalen Hurts has to just say, hey, I need to put it up for this guy. I don't care if they're double teaming him. Like, I'm going to scheme this guy open, get him there. And that's what you saw a little bit from Kellen Moore down the stretch. And that helped AJ Brown kind of break through to the numbers we're used to from him. So, and just talent-wise, AJ Brown's a better player. He's still in his prime. He's just a better red zone target, I think. Drake London is big. He should be as good as AJ Brown at stretching the field and scoring in the red zone, but he doesn't. Like, let's think about it this way. If AJ Brown was Michael Penix's go-to receiver and Drake London was on the Eagles, this wouldn't be close, right? The talent would say we're going with AJ Brown even with Michael Penix, right? And not with Drake London. So I look at it from that perspective. Again, nothing against London, but I just prefer to have AJ Brown on my team when push comes to shove and that decision comes in front of me.
Yeah, I mean, Drake London ended with 158 targets last year, 100 receptions, nearly 1,300 receiving yards, and 9 receiving touchdowns. And yet he still only finished as a top 10 wide receiver in 3 weeks last season. Was one of them again in week 18, where he didn't even help out with 99% of fantasy managers who don't play that week. And even looking at top 12, top 15 weeks, it was 4 weeks last season. So he had a few big games. And then outside of that, I mean, he's just not worth a second round pick. Like, you're not going to be happy with that. With AJ Brown, he has a much higher ceiling week to week on a consistent basis, and then just on season overall. So yeah, AJ Brown. So we're 2 for 2 so far. Let's see if we agree on this next one. Tee Higgins versus Garrett Wilson, both going in the middle-ish of the 3rd round. Higgins was the wide receiver 4 on average last year, but he's consistently misses, a few games each season. It seems like he has his injury issues, and he's the clear-cut wide receiver 2 on his team with Jamar Chase there. With Garrett Wilson, he had a career year as a wide receiver 11 in fantasy, but a lot like Drake London, his overall finish and his average points, a wide difference. So he finishes the wide receiver 23 on average. When you're just looking at their points per game, Higgins averaged 15.5 points per game last year, while Wilson was at 11.9. well, Wilson was kind of the wide receiver too, I guess, for a little bit part of the season last year with Devontae Adams there, but now is the clear cut wide receiver one with the Jets again. Where are you leaning, Tee Higgins or Garrett Wilson?
Yeah, I might have answered this question differently a little bit earlier, but I'm looking at the Bengals offense and I'm looking at the Bengals defense. And I'm also looking at how many options are in the Bengals offense at this point. Looks like they have to get the ball in the hands of Jamar Chase, Tee Higgins, and Chase Brown quite a bit. They just let Zach Moss go. So we don't have to worry about Chase Brown. We don't really have to worry yet about a third receiver emerging. We thought it could be Andre Savas or Jermaine Burton or any of these dudes coming through to replace Tyler Boyd. We didn't really see that, right? And again, Tee Higgins was the average wide receiver 4 last year. And this is on a team that had Jamar Chase win the receiving triple crown and was the top wide receiver on the board. So they had plenty of room for 2 receivers to go off. It's not like this team has a reliable tight end. They tried, didn't work. Does this team have a reliable third receiver that Boyd is long gone? No, they really don't. And keep in mind, they had to adjust their offense away from Brian Callahan. So it became a lot about Chase and Higgins. They're paying these guys a ton of money with Joe Burrow. They have to target these guys a lot. And this team is going to pass like crazy. I know Trey Hendrickson just showed up again. Defense is still going to stink. They have a lot of issues transitioning with Al Golden, a lot of things that you worry about. And they're in a lot of games where they're going to face some really good teams. So that's going to be a lot of throwing and a lot of high-scoring games for the Bengals. So, look, the Jets, this is the old conundrum. Do you take the best receiver with a bad quarterback on a bad throwing quarterback, I should say, on a shaky offense, or do you take in a receiver with an elite passer, elite number 1 guy next to him? I think I have to go with Tee Higgins. I think I trust him more in the Bengals offense in that clear number 2 dominating role, right? When there's not a 3 in this offense. So him and Chase are going to eat up those numbers again. Where, look, Garrett Wilson, again, no offense to him. Look, if he was on another team, if these roles are reversed again, I would go with the guy that is playing with Joe Burrow. So in this case, I would go with the quarterback and the system over the wide receiver. It's just unfortunate Garrett Wilson is on the Jets with Justin Fields and maybe run happy offense and maybe not getting the ball enough.
Yeah, so we're going 3 for 3 here because I'm
Yeah.
also going with Higgins, and I don't even think it's actually all that close. Like you might yes, Wilson's going to see maybe 50 more targets than Tee Higgins. That could happen, but Higgins' targets are going to be so much better. They're going to be, he's going to have so many more scoring opportunities. Defenses are going to be able to completely focus on stopping Garrett Wilson, right? So Higgins will have way more space to work. And what we saw out of Higgins last year, averaging 15.5 points per game, we just never even seen anything close to that with Wilson. Throughout his 3 seasons in the NFL, his points per game have been 9.8, 10.3, and 11.9. Now it has, 11.9 last year was his career high. But and I'm not even that worried about Justin Fields. We saw DJ Moore have a career season with Justin Fields in Chicago. But even DJ Moore's career season at 14 points per game doesn't come close to Tee Higgins' season last year. And yes, Jamar Chase is amazing and he's going to outproduce Tee Higgins. But last year, they both finished top 4 on average scoring and fantasy points. They both finished top 3 in the NFL in red zone targets. They both finished they both tied for first in goal line looks last year. And that was with Higgins missing games as well. And that's a worry, right? Higgins has been dealing with injuries that keeps him off the field. It seems like nagging hamstring or whatever injuries. And that's a worry, but I'm just going to take that chance. And when he's on the field with Joe Burrow, it all goes to Chase and Higgins. And like you said, the defense is still going to be bad. They have a lot of big games they're going to have to keep up. So I'm going Tee Higgins over Garrett Wilson here as well. Let's see if we have any differences. We have 2 more debates to get through. We may have a difference on this next one. I have a strong feeling because your boy that you love is in this question. I'm not choosing him. It's Terry McLaurin versus Marvin Harrison Jr. to give you a little sneak peek. But let's hear from one of our sponsors before we get into that. Have you ever checked your bank account and wondered where did all my money go between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment? It's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO giving you a full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I first started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. It was actually absurd. But now I budget smarter and save a lot more. Plus, managing money with my partner has never been smoother. We're able to track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. You get to take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com/LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. All right, let's keep going to another round. So we've done, wide receiver debate in the first round, in the second round, in the third round. And now let's say we're sitting in the fourth round looking to take a wide receiver. Both Terry McLaurin and Marvin Harrison Jr. are sitting there. Which side are you going with, Vinnie?
Yeah, interesting. We have two Ohio State receivers. One guy that wasn't as hyped coming in. One was super hyped coming in. You also have two great racing nicknames, kind of F1 and Maserati Marv. Now, this might surprise you, Michelle. I've tried to look at this a little bit more in the McLaurin situation. Again, you got to pay attention to things that are changing. I just don't like the vibe of what's going on with him and Deebo Samuel arriving there. I just don't love it as much. And again, he was so touchdown dependent last year, and I'll admit that. Like, that's what it got us to where I liked him as a sleeper, and I loved it with him and Jane Daniels. I had a great stack in a lot of leagues, but now I think he's become a little bit too rich in relation to his actual production value, where he was going late, right? He was going as like wide receiver 25 to 30 last year. So he was a great value there. But now he's not such a great value at this position. So where was Marvin Harrison going? He was going like top 8 at this position last year. But where is he now? He's wide receiver 19. And I think that's what makes him a better value, Michelle. Like, I know this surprises you. I love Terry McLaurin, but I'm not sure he's going to outplay that position all that much, where I could see Marvin Harrison outplaying wide receiver 19. All the reports have been positive. Look, every report on most player is positive right now, but there's just certain things they're tweaking. They know they made a mistake in not getting him involved or pushing him. He knows he made a mistake. He should have been more commanding of the ball to go after it. And also, Kyler Murray wasn't all that great connecting him for the last season. But the pressure's on a lot of people here. Look, Jonathan Gannon, I know it's been limited time, but he's got to show something here. I mean, the Cardinals need to do a lot more offensively, especially with Drew Petzing. It was underwhelming last season. I'm shocked they didn't make a change like we saw in a lot of situations. They got to show us a lot. And Marvin Harrison, you have to come through. I mean, look, we can't force and will a player to come through, but luckily he's got a lot of talent. And he still can force himself to be the go-to guy again. There wasn't a lot of change here in terms of the targets are not going to change too much, right? He's still going to see a healthy amount of targets. The offensive scheme is the same. The quarterback is the same. Trey McBride is still kind of the guy that he's going to play off of at tight end more so than any of the wide receivers. So everything's the same. I think the difference is he's going to be a lot more efficient. And they're going to put him the ball in different situations where he gets the ball earlier, throw him in the red zone a little bit more. So I think, look, the history says the Harrisons, the Marvin Harrisons, I should say, have a mediocre first year, then come back the next year and really show us that they can be a fantasy performer. So in terms of the value and cost, I think you're going to get a much better ROI on Marvin Harrison Jr. than Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, and there's a shot that if you go with Marvin Harrison Jr., that it could be a disaster pick again and a total waste. And you're not going to get a total wasted pick from Terry McLaurin. Like he's going to be a fantasy asset that you're able to start week in and week out. And there'll be some weeks he disappoints you, and some weeks he does just fine. And like he won't be useless. Which Marvin Harrison Jr. went through a pretty long stretch last year where you could not start him whatsoever. And I really wish that the Cardinals had changed their OC, because it's hard to be like, okay, well, what's going to change? But I mean, they spent such an early draft pick on this guy. They need to get him the ball more often. And there's a lot of room for growth and targets for Marvin Harrison Jr. And like, I get Trey McBride. really dominated in targets last year, but their offense was very inconsistent. So you wouldn't think they want to just go in with the same game plan as they did last year. So you would hope they change that. Hopefully Marvin Harrison has worked on his separation skills this offseason and everything. So I'm leaning with Marvin Harrison with you. I'm shocked you went with that side. I thought you were going to go Terry McLaurin, but McLaurin, we know exactly what he is. And last year, yes, the best year by far for fantasy, wide receiver 7 overall. But again, wide receiver 15 in points per game. That's with scoring 13 touchdowns. He still only had 117 targets despite playing 17 games. They added Deebo Samuel. I don't know why you would expect his targets to increase next year. And then also, like, he just had a 4 games with multiple receiving touchdowns. And if you just look at the games where he doesn't score 2 touchdowns or more, a average 11.3 points per game in those 13 games. That's fine, but that's less than what Jacoby Myers, Adam Thielen, Rashid Shaheed, Cooper Kupp averaged last year. So I do think there's just a lot more room for disappointment when it comes to Terry McLaurin, and just his upside isn't as high as I think a Marvin Harrison Jr. can be. So we're 4 for 4. I mean, some people might find that boring, but maybe that really tells you which way you should be leaning in drafts. We have one more debate to go. It's Teteroa McMillan, the rookie for the Panthers, versus Xavier Worthy. These guys are going in the late 5th, maybe early 6th round. And if you're sitting there having both of those guys available to you, Vinny, which one are you drafting?
Yeah, this one was tough because I was feeling Worthy, of course, after the Super Bowl, much like the Gabe Davis effect, where we're feeling it after the playoffs. And look at what he did in the Super Bowl. So we're going to go in that direction. Then we've had some things go up and down a little bit. Marquise Brown is back, but then Marquise Brown got hurt. Then Xavier Worthy himself had a concussion. He's going to have to miss time in camp. Rashee Rice, we'll see about the suspension there. Travis Kelce's still hanging on here. So I'm not sure if Xavier Worthy is going to explode the way we want. I think I want to will and force this to happen. Again, we can't do that in fantasy. It just has to happen based on the framework of who's actually calling the plays and the talent. So Teteroa McMillan, however, he's had a great training camp. There's no doubt about it. Like, if you hear anything about who's the best Panther so far, McMillan has been it. He's been going up and getting the ball. He's been doing everything they need, taking command, which is what we need Marvin Harrison Jr. to say. Like, he needs a little bit more ego to say, I'm the dude. Maybe Marvin Harrison Sr. said, don't have an ego, because he wasn't. But I think McMillan was like, I'm going to go get this. Like, he reminds me a lot of Puka Nacua coming to the league. Just like, I'm going to go earn this. I'm big, I'm strong, I'm fast. I'm going to just do what I can to just use my body to make plays. And there's a nice chemistry we talked about with Bryce Young developing. Also nice parallel, Dave Canales with him and Mike Evans. We thought this was a great draft pick. We thought this was a great skill set going to this Panthers offense. Again, I think this is maybe an untapped offense where we're overrating maybe the Packers and some other teams, or the Texans. This is an untapped offense that we really need to look at more and more in fantasy. I think there's a lot of promise with Bryce Young being more able to execute consistently, look like a legit offense, especially in the pass game from week to week. So I'm going Teteroa McMillan. I'm surprised I'm doing it, but again, clear path to number 1. The talent is there, all things considered. He's going to dominate the target. So Worthy might have to fight for them a little bit if all those guys are in the mix.
We're going 5 for 5, and
Yeah.
we had no idea we were going to do this. These were just random questions I threw in. These are all guys going right around each other in the draft, and maybe we talk to each other too much about fantasy. I don't know. And we're getting in each other's mind. But McMillan, yeah, I just feel much safer about him being the clear-cut wide receiver 1 on his team. And I mean, the quarterback situation obviously leans Xavier Worthy by 1 million, but Patrick Mahomes hasn't been needing to throw as much. His passing numbers have been down. They're just a really good defense. The Panthers defense is still on paper one of the worst in the league. Bryce Young looks better. And, at the end of last year, we saw a lot of these Panthers wide receivers have a lot of good fantasy games, and Jalen Coker and Adam Thielen and even David Moore. I mean, weeks 13 through 17 to end that year, or to end last year, Bryce Young was getting his wide receivers a lot of fantasy production, at least the top guy he was targeting. And Teteroa McMillan, I just really love him coming out of school, out of Arizona. I mean, he led the FBS in receiving yards per game over the last 2 seasons at 109 receiving yards per game. He's that big-bodied guy that Bryce Young can just throw it up to, and we're already seeing it in training camp. He's going to come down with it. And it really is hard not to compare him to a guy like Tee Higgins or Mike Evans, or maybe even, a stronger Brian Thomas Jr. from last year. So I'm excited to see what McMillan can do. And I just think if one of these guys are going to finish top 10, it's the more likely that it's McMillan than Worthy. So 5 out of 5, we agree. Write these.
Take that to the bank then in your
Yeah.
drafts. That actually makes you feel better. Like, we debate a lot, but you can take whatever we take and look at these players and examine them. But when we agree on something, it's usually good things for you. So keep that in mind. And we're going to help you do this all draft month long coming up. So don't worry about that. We've got you covered with rankings, mock drafts, all that good stuff here. So I'm glad you're on board here. And I guess, Michelle, we're going to look at quarterbacks next on this train that we're on.
Yeah, we'll do 5. We'll look at 5 pairs of quarterbacks tomorrow, and that are going around the same area in drafts, and make our decisions who we would take. Maybe we'll go 5 for 5 again. I don't know. We'll see. But I want to thank you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On Bets. Betting experts Lee Sterling and Kevin Rogers have daily MLB locks and can't miss football futures. Find Locked On Bets on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We will talk to you tomorrow. Enjoy your night. Bye, y'all.